Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fun-filled lecture. Today, we are going to be talking about absolutism in France, probably one of my favorites of the absolutism period. So, we kind of have to understand what absolutism is first and foremost. So, absolutism just basically means that it's a system in which the ruler holds total and complete absolute power. They controlled all the wealth, they controlled all the people. They made all the religious decisions. And the people would eventually fight this. But during this whole Middle Ages and growth of Renaissance and the growth of rebirth, you start to see the kings take more power. And so, how did they do this? Well, they claimed divine right. So, if you remember back to when we talked about ancient China and the heaven of mandate, this is Europe's version of the heaven of mandate. It basically meant that God put you there. God wished you to be the ruler so badly that he put you in place. And that the only person, deity that could keep them accountable was God and not the people. It's a very Machiavellian idea, right? Remember back to that? Oh yeah. So, what led to absolutism, absolute monarchs? Well, first and foremost, it was the decline of feudalism and the growth of the cities once again, along with the middle class, because monarchs promised peace and growth. And people actually believe that. Monarchs used the colonial wealth of the age of exploration to help pay for their ambitions. The church authority was greatly weakened because of the Protestant Reformation, so monarchs gained extra power. And then there was this growth of national identity that united and gave pride to the individual countries. So all of this in combination led to absolute monarchs. And the first place we're going to start is actually in France, because France is a very interesting location. France was caught in between Catholics and Protestants over which was the correct form of Christianity. So this is a map that shows you where the mostly Catholics were in the lights or the yellow. Then you had what's called the French Huguenots. And then you just had areas where nobody lived, because it was this area that was just not, war happened. So there was these French wars over religion. It was Catholics versus Protestants. It was basically the political and economic growth and function of each of these groups. You had the French monarchy, who was very much Catholic and persecuted French Protestants, these Huguenots. But many of the nobles were actually Huguenots, not Catholic. This is where we get St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. And it happened in Paris. So the Queen Mother, Catherine de' Medici, planned this massacre. And that de' Medici should actually look very familiar, because that's actually the Medici family from Italy. So at the wedding celebration of the Catholic princess to a Huguenot heir throne, oh yeah, wedding day, there were 70,000 plus that were killed throughout France on this day. Wah, wah. It's a day of mourning. They still practice it in France. And then enter in 1589 Henry IV of Navarre. He would become the first Bourbon king, establishing a Bourbon royal family. He converted to Roman Catholicism because Paris was worth its mass. So there you go. He established the Edict of Nantes, which basically said that Catholicism was the official religion of France, and the Huguenots had the right to worship and hold political office. So this would, decrease the wars. Henry IV eliminated the French debt and created industry, encouraged trade and agriculture. He would actually revert to Protestantism to annul his marriage and then remarried, and then he was assassinated. Kings. So Before the famous Louise came into power, you had Cardinal Rilachoux, um, which was the chief minister of Louis VIII. And Louis VIII actually inherited the throne as a child and had to eventually take it from his Italian mother and her Italian advisors. Um, Cardinal would actually go on to strengthen the monarchy and help create the age of absolutism. He took away the political and military rights of all of the Huguenots without taking any of the religious rights away. He actually set up a network of spies to be able to spy on the nobles, and that was to crush conspiracy theories and tore down nobles' castles if they were not for French defense. So this is Cardinal sorry, my brain is not working right now. But this is the cardinal, and this is King Louis. Now, we have to jump forward from King Louis VIII to King Louis XIV. He actually becomes king at 4. At 23 years old, when his chief died, this is when he held absolute power. And he viewed himself as the sun king. This goes back to Apollo, the sun god, right? He actually believed that everything came from him. So he used to say, "L'être c'est moi," which basically means I am the state. And he is the perfect example of an absolute monarch. The royal court, he thought Paris was too corrupt and there was too many conspiracies, so he moves the capital of France from Paris to his hunting lodge at Versailles, which is just outside of Paris. 3 reasons is because this was the personal household of the king. Offices of the state were now located there. Powerful subjects had to come there to talk to him and to serve him. And then the long-term cause of the French Revolution would be because of this growth of Versailles, that all the wealth and royalty were no longer in Paris. Versailles was thought to be a gilded cage for nobles. To help the royal family dress, the nobles ran out of money and they had to rely on the king. Oh yeah, it was not a good situation. It was here that Louis would actually end the tolerance for the Huguenots and close the churches. Protestants fled, like 200,000 Protestants had this mass exodus out of France. He would actually fought in 4 wars between 1667 and 1713 to gain a lot of power and prestige. Many countries would go on to form coalitions against Louis to keep him from controlling all of Europe, which was one of his main goals. So this is Louis XIV as the Sun King. This is the Bourbon family crest, which is King Louis's crest. And he actually would have a lot of portraits of him as Apollo, the sun god, because he is the sun. A lot of, at Versailles, you'll see a lot of throwbacks to the sun and the sun symbols. So I don't know why it's here, but you see the sun with its rays branching out. Oh yeah. So this was actually the old chateau, the just humble hunting lodge of King Louis. So here is the lodge, and these are the grounds, and this is the front gate and front entrance here. You notice that there are other houses where, the servants, the help would stay. And this is what it is today. So here's the front gate. Here is that initial building that we saw in the other photo, right? And then he expanded it to all of this madness. Yeah, it's insane. Now it's not pronounced Versailles, it is pronounced Versailles. It's the French. And it's gorgeous and huge. It's approximately 2,000 acres. There are 12 miles of roads just on the grounds of Versailles alone. There's 27 miles of trellises, 200,000 trees, 210,000 flowers that are planted every year. There's 80 miles of rows of trees, just rows of trees, 55 acres of surface area for a grand canal, 12 miles of enclosed walls, 50 fountains, and 620 fountain nozzles for 50 fountains, 21 miles of water pipes, 3,600 cubic meters per hour of water consumed, 26 acres of just roof alone, 51,210 square meters of floors. Oh, yeah, there's 700 rooms. 2,100 windows, 67 staircases, 6,000 paintings, 1,500 drawings, and 15,000 engravings, 2,100 sculptures, 5,000 items of furniture and objects of art. And then there are also 150 varieties of apples and peach trees in the vegetable garden. Oh, yeah. But the most famed thing about the Palace of Versailles is the Hall of Mirrors. So each of these individual panels here, they're mirrors to help reflect the light and make it look open and bright, and it is absolutely gorgeous. Also, everything that you see that looks like it's gold in this picture actually is gold. 100% gold. This is Louis's chapel. This is where he would come to worship. His opera stage, his gilded in gold carriage. Oh, yeah. Louis had a lot of great ambitions. He wanted to expand into Europe, so he invades the Spanish Netherlands. He invades the Dutch Netherlands, but he's stopped by flooding on the countryside, and France gained some additional land through treaty. And then you have the establishment of what's called the League of Augsburgs. This was basically when England, Austria, Sweden, and Spain form an alliance against France to keep them from expanding. But there was a problem in Spain, and it comes down to succession. So Charles II, the King of Spain, who was the last of the Habsburgs, Spanish, literally insane for most of his life because thanks inbreeding. He suffered from what's called mandibular prognatism, which basically means that you have a protruding jaw, like your lower jaw outgrows the upper one. And it's often referred to as the Habsburg jaw or the Habsburg lip. And this was due to inbreeding. And Charles II had it so bad that he was not able to chew. And to show you what this looks like is you have Charles V, the grandfather, and it's just this protruding jaw. That is due to inbreeding. And this is a map to show you the inbreeding. There are very few outside figures in this. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is it. That's it. Like within this family tree, there are only 4 outsiders that marry into it. Because of that reason, look at this. He marries his niece. Cousins marrying cousins. Like, ugh, inbreeding. And that's why most of the monarchy is crazy. So Charles actually hangs on for about 35 years, but he unfortunately doesn't leave any heir. So this creates a huge problem because King Louis XIV marries his eldest sister. So he would annex Spain by France, for France. But then on the other side, you had the Holy Roman Emperor Leopold I, who marries the other sister of Charles. So that means he would actually be uniting a powerful Spanish and Australian Habsburg Empire. Oh, it was bad. So Charles II had a will. So 16-year-old Philip V was actually named as successor. So he is Louis XIV's grandson and Philip IV of Spain's great-grandson. So this would establish the Bourbon line ruling Spain. So French ruling Spain. So there was a huge fight over this. And as a result, there was a treaty that basically left Philip to remain as king, but there was to be no uniting the kingdoms, the Bourbon kingdoms of France and Spain under France or under any Bourbon rule or authority. But the big winner in all of this would be England, who would win the Strait of Gibraltar. So that little tiny strait break in the land that gives access to the Mediterranean. And they actually still have control over it to this day. So this is what the map looks like. You have England here that basically gets nothing in any of this. You have the Bourbon ruling lines here in Spain and in France. You have Austria that controls the green, and then this dark line is what is considered the Holy Roman Empire, which, fun fact, is not holy, is not Roman, and is not an empire, but that's for a later date and a later discussion. All right, I'll see you guys. Bye.